History clearly illustrates why progressives must learn how to govern. This presentation focuses on understanding the challenges, key historical points, and what must be done about healthcare reform. Let's begin by understanding what we're up against. It's irrational to be afraid of something like a traffic light just because it's government-run. Unfortunately, many Americans have bought into Reagan's "government is the problem." People are also focused on the public option costs instead of the far greater and increasing costs of the healthcare system. 34% still approve of George Bush's presidency. And bipartisanship, or making a sincere effort to work with your opponents, is something that is very important to the American people. Finally, we must contend with what is really holding up the public option: disloyal Democrats that are threatening us with a filibuster. Let's start with Reagan. Reagan was wrong. Government is not the problem. Mismanagement is. AIG, Enron, the savings and loan debacle of the 80s, the Great Depression, are all examples of capitalist mismanagement. The Better Business Bureau has over 800,000 complaints a year, but you don't abandon capitalism because of these problems. The same goes for our government. Vigilance and hard work are the answer. Now, many of you remember President Eisenhower's warning about the military-industrial complex. Well, we're up against something far more powerful. We're talking about power, in terms of revenue, that is greater than what the top 10 companies in the defense industry, the auto industry, and even the oil and gas industry make. You need this comparison so you can galvanize the kind of resources and commitment needed to meet this challenge. The projected increase in revenues to $4.3 trillion by 2014 is why the healthcare industry is fighting the public option so hard. Obviously, it's what they are most afraid will cut into their revenues. Every entrepreneur in the country should consider very carefully what an increase to 23.3% of GDP going to healthcare will do to our economy. This is money that most industries will not be paying back to shareholders to encourage reinvestment, money that businesses will not have to expand, and money that you will not see in pay increases. We found that the third most capitalistic country also has the most efficient healthcare system. They have the best speed of service, number of private practices, infant mortality, and life expectancy rates. Their single-payer system runs at only 8.3% of GDP as compared to our 17.5%. If we can be as efficient as the Japanese, imagine what American business, government, and you could do with the savings. Unfortunately, the paranoia over things government-run is still too strong to get the votes needed for this proposal. Liberals agreed to the public option as a compromise. Though it will not drive us toward Japanese efficiency, H.R. 3200 does pool millions to seriously curb the $1.8 trillion in cost increases. It also provides universal coverage. Keep in mind that co-ops are being offered to dilute that bargaining power. Don't let our opponents get away with focusing on the $23.9 billion needed for universal coverage, when the real problem is the $1.8 trillion. Republicans have no independently verified savings plan that shows that they're serious about solving this problem. Having covered the financial costs, let's move on to the lies, liars, and the people who support our opponents. Only engage reasonable people. Track the lies, liars, and who has yet to denounce them. Make it more expensive to lie. When the president was called a racist, progressives brought this race baiting to the attention of the show's sponsors publicly. Public shame and a boycott led to the sponsors withdrawing from the show. Don't enable more lying by simply getting sucked into the next invalid argument. Insist that the credibility of our opponents is in question and bring the focus back to the unresolved lie. Hold our opponents and their media allies accountable. Democratic candidates and liberal media commentators need to publicly shame those who fail to stand up for the truth. Share links and promote good journalism. Progressives waste too much time ranting when they should be sharing links to excellent journalism to support continued investigation. Use the time saved to address those people in the middle that are concerned about things like bipartisanship. Democrats kept our promise to work in a bipartisan fashion. Here's all the progress that we made that Republicans agree with. Swing voters also need to know that Democrats have been more than patient on national health insurance. After almost a century, we had an election to decide between Republican care, the single-payer system that liberals advocate, and the Obama compromise or public option. After months of giving up concessions, moderates have not even obtained one single Republican vote for their plans. 51 senators, now favor the public option. So the real problem is the 9 Senate Democrats that are siding with our opponents and threatening us with a filibuster. In 1993, Democrats refused to publicly discipline disloyal Democrats. Let's take a moment to consider the suffering that has taken place since then. All of us know what it's like to see someone suffering in a hospital bed. Now imagine watching someone you love die, so an insurance company does not have to spend money. Every month, more people die than we lost on 9/11 because they are either under or uninsured. The genocide of Bosnia and Nanking count among the worst atrocities in the last century. 10 years after the healthcare reform failure of 1993, our death toll is even greater. By 2013, this is how it will compare to Rwanda. I have no words to adequately describe the actual suffering that these numbers represent. Ultimately, if progressives remain afraid to publicly denounce disloyal Democrats for their complicity in this, then we are just as guilty. This is why progressives must learn how to govern. Now that we have a president with a proper respect for our separate and equal legislative branch, polls show that we're actually upset with him about how he has handled healthcare reform. It's not the president's job to make our senators do what we want. That's our responsibility. The American Constitution is about self-governance. A 1-month debate limit amongst congressional Democrats is healthy. However, if you cannot persuade enough Democrats to your cause, this should be followed by unity under the platform. Americans loathe the disorganized and ineffective. Our platform is our 2-year business plan. You can't run a business if a group of employees are undermining what you promised your customers. If you don't deliver on your promises, the voters will withdraw support just like they did in 1994. Being a Democrat gives you a seat at the table of platform revision. Once we run candidates on the platform, though, it becomes the job of every elected Democrat to pass it, at least until the next revision. The fairness of this agreement is the foundation for order among Democrats. National coordination on the Democrat renegades with calls, emails, social networking, blogging, letters to the editor, ads, and even running progressives against renegades is important. Publicly track and rank legislators by how quickly they declare support for the party position so that we reward loyalty and punish disloyalty. The filibuster is a tactic by which a minority in the Senate shuts down the government to let the American people know that the Senate is about to do something wrong. Disloyal Democrats have nothing to accuse us of other than trying to keep our platform promises. Clearly, everyone needs a reminder of what happened to Republicans when they pulled this stunt on Clinton without the actual support of the people. The misuse of the filibuster must end if we're to be effective. All the money and work that Democrats are spending on healthcare reform since the election should be going instead to candidates for 2010 and to further other vital progressive issues. The filibuster will focus everyone who voted for Obama on the Senate Democrats that are betraying him. Finally, you must work for every progressive issue on the platform like it is what is most important to you. From this unity comes the strength to not only pass reform now, but to also defend that reform in the next election. If we remain effective in this way, the voters will continue to trust us with the Congress and the White House. This will allow us to continue advancing toward our long-term goals. To help with our ad campaign on disloyal Democrats, please sign up for action alerts at forprogress.org. Remember, it's also vital that you share this information and donate to our ad campaign. Thank you.